All right. Hello, everybody. Those who are replaying the video, you should see us live. Come on in. We are so excited for this evening. If you are watching the replay, please let us know. Comment in the chat and let us know that you are a replay viewer. We should be up and running in just a second. How you doing, Crystal?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I
It's
am doing good. I
I'm
am
doing well. The
excited.
day is going good.
Yes, we've been, planning for today. Really excited about this conversation. I know that so many women are going to really enjoy this because we're coming together for a real and raw chat about all things prophetic, but then also being a woman and just so many different things. And so, as you are joining in, say hello to us, say good evening to us. We are so excited to have you on this evening. Share this broadcast if you are on Facebook with us. Share, tag all your girls, all the people. Let them know that we are live. We are excited for tonight's conversation. It is going to be good. And make sure you say hi to us in the chat. We want
Yes,
to know who's live.
yes, say hello. I'm so excited about this conversation. It's so needed.
Listen,
And like you said, it's a real, raw, and honest conversation on how to be gifted and successful as women in ministry, in business, family, and it's needed. So let a sister know that we live.
yes.
Hello,
Whether
Tracy.
you're prophetic, not prophetic, think you prophetic, all the things. We're going to have some real good conversation on tonight. And so we want all the girls, okay, all the ladies, come on in and have a
Come on.
conversation with us. All right. So we have been planning this for a while. The Lord really just laid on our heart the necessity to be able to have real and raw conversations, not just as gifted women, but as women who are human, women who every single day, we have to, deal with the ebbs and flows of life, just being gifted. Sometimes we can look at our gifts and forget about our humanity. And it's so important that we don't just talk about those things, but we also talk about how to navigate other aspects of our lives and what that looks like to be gifted, to be human, to be a multifaceted woman, to wear different hats, all the things, right? And so that's what we're going to be diving into tonight. So if you are joining us, say hello. Hey, Brianna, RCN team.
Hello. Hello,
Brianna,
ladies.
hello.
Oh, y'all are in the chat.
Come on. They saying hello to us. Let us know where you're tuning in from as well. We're going to wait and see how many women jump on before we get into all the goodness and the goodies of it all. But where are you tuning in from? Good evening.
Good evening. Hey, Kanita. I see you in the chat.
Hey, hey. All right. If y'all can hear us and see us okay, put a one in the chat for us. If you can hear and see us okay, put a one in the chat for us so we know that you are tuning in tonight. Hello from Arizona. Hey, hey.
Hello
Oh,
from Charlotte,
from the
Florida.
shy. Okay. All right, good. Okay. We want to make sure that everybody can hear and see us okay. All right, so I think we can dive in. We 5 minutes in, Crystal. You think we can just go ahead
Okay,
and dive in? You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's
Let's
do it.
let's get to it. Let's get to it. All right, y'all. So on tonight, we are having a real and raw and honest conversation again about what it means to be gifted and a successful woman in ministry and business and family and marketplace. Hey, brother. While maintaining authenticity, balance, and just like spiritual integrity, right? Being a woman of integrity, being a woman of authenticity, just being who you are at your core and showing up the same on the platform and behind the scenes. And so that's extremely important. And so I'm gonna just go ahead and introduce myself first, and I'm gonna let Crystal introduce herself. But I am Raven. No, you can call me Raven. You can call me Prophetess Raven. I am currently residing in the Shy, but we are going to be making some transitions soon. I'm a
Sure.
strategic advisor, a counselor, a leadership coach. I'm the founder of Prophetic Arrows, where we equip prophetic women. I'm a podcast host. I do a lot of things. I have two wonderful children, Kalia and KJ. I've been married to my husband. This is going on our 8th year. We're in our 8th year of marriage. And we just doing all the things. And so wearing all the hats, living life, that's me. Off to you, Crystal.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Crystal Hulbert, Dr. Crystal Hulbert. By profession, I study psychology and the mind. I am the owner of Anchored Counseling and Wellness Center. I'm an author, I'm a coach, I'm a counselor, a leader, consultant. I'm a wife. Above all those things, I'm a wife. Shout out to my husband. I love that man down. Yeah, and I do all things prophetic. So, Anchored Mentorship Program, all the things. And I'm just excited tonight because I really believe that the conversations that we're going to have just for women is needed. It's some things that, like the elephant in the room, the things that we're afraid to say out loud, or the things that we struggle with, whether it be in ministry, relationships, business. So I'm excited for the conversation.
Yes. And I see all the women are already in the chat like, hello. Hey, Crystal, I see you in there. If y'all excited on tonight to have this conversation, let us know in the chat. We don't want it to be all this, are we going to prophesy and do all the things? But we just want it to be a little light. Let's have a little fun on tonight and just enjoy ourselves. So if you are excited for this conversation on this evening, let us know in the chat that you are excited. That you are excited. Now, Crystal, I posted a post on Facebook a couple days ago, and let me tell you, the women were eating it up. Okay, they were eating the post up. Okay, they said, yes, we need to be authentic. Okay, and so we were like, I love it, I love it, I love it. So I feel like we should start the conversation off with just talking about like what it just means to be a prophetic woman in general
Mhm.
and what that looks like. And, I know for me, what I think about, with being a prophetic woman, it's not just about carrying a title or a
Mhm.
gift, but it's really about a mandate, right? It's
Yeah.
about an assignment that you have. It's a weight of responsibility that impacts like every sphere of your life. And,
Mhm.
being multifaceted women like we are, we wear so many different hats, but you also don't take off being prophetic. Like just because
Right.
you show up in different facets of who you are, whether that's in your career, whether that's in ministry, whether that's at home, you're always prophetic. There's no on and off switch, right? You're who you are at your core. And so what would you define like a prophetic woman as?
Prophetic woman, and that's so good. You said something that just stuck out to me just now, and we're just getting started, but I'm already stirred. So you said you don't turn the prophetic off, and that is so true. Because oftentimes I think, just in general, in reference to the prophetic, we think that we only function inside the four walls of the church, right? But being prophetic and being a prophetic woman means that you're prophetic in your home, you're prophetic in the marketplace, you're prophetic in conversations that you're having in the grocery store. So it doesn't turn off. And being a prophetic woman, it carries a unique assignment, right? It
Mhm.
often requires us to function in multiple capacities. So, like I said, ministering in the church, leading in the marketplace, nurturing our families, walking in integrity and holiness and wholeness. And I think that balancing these roles while maintaining authenticity and spiritual stamina can present like different challenges, whether we're at home, whether we're on our jobs, whether we're functioning in leadership in the church. But they can also present victories, right? So I think being an authentic prophetic woman means being a vessel of God's voice, right? It means being fully yielded to his authority, to his truth. It means being deeply rooted in intimacy with the Lord, right? And I believe that authenticity is not just about having a gift, but it's about having alignment. It's about having integrity. It's about having submission, right, to the one who sent us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's your thoughts, Raven?
I love that you said that because I think sometimes also it's important to like recognize that there is beauty in it, but there's also
Mhm.
like this level of being burdensome in a sense, right? Because you are uniquely who you are, but at the same time, there's so much weight that comes with it because you have to be intentional about being fully aligned with God's original intent for you. right? Being authentic and being gifted and all those different things, and being able to show up in an authentic version of yourself as a gifted woman, that really does come from your full alignment with God, because your prophetic nature comes from Him. At the end of the day, your
Yeah.
prophetic nature comes from Him, whether you consider yourself to have a prophetic gift or you consider yourself to be a prophet. In order for you to be authentic to who you are, in order for you to show up in your authenticity, you have to fully align yourself with God's original intent for you.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can do that is by seeking Him, right? And
Right.
ensuring that you're not adding or subtracting from who you are just based on people's opinions of you, maybe how you've seen it done in the past, maybe people's expectations, whether you are, whatever environment that you may be in, different atmospheres can put different expectations on you. And so sometimes you can try to maneuver and
Mhm.
change yourself to fit a mold that you think is the right way, right? You
That's
think this is how I should be presenting myself, but
mhm.
it's like I wouldn't even know how to show up as Raven, like who I am in the fullness of my identity, without me being able to seek God for His original intent for me.
That's good. That's
You
good.
know?
So it's safe to say that an authentic prophetic woman, right, is a woman of integrity. And I say that because being a woman of integrity and not performance, let me just say these prophetic streets can get very interesting, right?
Yes.
And the world like values gifting over character. And I think that being an authentic prophetic woman, right, you know that credibility comes from consistency in the secret place. So you
Hmm.
mentioned like knowing what your makeup is and who you are before the world tells you who you are. And I
Yeah.
just believe that an authentic prophetic woman has credibility in the secret place, right? It comes from consistency and spending time with the Lord and not charisma, right?
Hmm.
And I think that prophetic women don't chase platforms, right? You're prophetic for purpose. So you know what your purpose is, whether you're on a platform or not, and your lifestyle aligns with what the Lord says, like who the Lord says that you are, right?
Hmm.
So you don't prophesy to manipulate, you don't prophesy to gain influence or to secure favor or anything like that. But your agenda is solely to be obedient to the Lord. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's powerful because sometimes we can fall into that trap of wanting to perform. You know what I mean? Because it's like you want some of that, you want that validation or that affirmation. And if people, just in life, right? There's deficits. There are voids that we created. Both of us are counselors, so we understand like going through the ebbs and flows of life and childhood and development. And there's always going to be something that was not met. There's going to be a need that you did not get. And when you
Right.
start to display, yourself as a gifted individual, people gravitate to that. That's just truly what it is. And it can feel good to desire that affirmation. It can feel good to get that validation. You're like, finally, somebody sees me. Finally, somebody is recognizing me. Finally, but we have to see integrity, we have to see identity, we have to see sonship or being daughters as
Mhm.
weighing more than
Mhm.
the approval and the applause of anyone. You know what I mean? And taking that journey as prophetic women to deepen our relationship with God, deepen our walk with the Lord, like you said, in the secret place. And it requires, true intimacy
Mhm.
over over like imitation, right?
Mhm.
Really walking in intimacy and having that prophetic expression and having that relationship with the Lord, and it not being something that you're just trying to, like you said, perform, right?
Yeah.
This is coming from the depth of my relationship with God, my authenticity and who I show up as, who I present myself as, who I display myself as. Like this is coming from a place of a deep well of intimacy with the Lord, and
Mhm.
not anything where I'm imitating something that I'm not.
That's so good. So you said something, and I'm gonna push you to dive a little deeper because it was good. What does the pressure to perform look like? Like as a prophetic woman right now, what does that look like when you see different prophetic expressions or just you journeying through your overall journey in the prophetic? What does that look like?
One of the things that I feel like for me for a while, I felt like because I'm a prophet, right? I should always have a word to give somebody.
Ooh, ooh.
I feel like it, you know what I mean? And you can feel as if well, something must be wrong with me if the Lord's not speaking to me right now about this individual, or the Lord's not speaking to me right now about this situation.
Mhm.
And sometimes, as God's mouthpieces, whether you are a prophet, whether you are just a gifted individual, whether you are a singer, whether you are whatever you are, you can feel that pressure to feel like I have to show myself as what my title is or what
Mhm.
people expect of me. And so
Mhm.
I know for me, I had to take that journey of not feeling like I always have to have a prophetic word for someone, or I always have to have some type of revelation just right off the bat or right at the top of my head. If the Lord's not speaking, He's not speaking. You know what I mean? And I think
Absolutely.
that we start to make ourselves into many gods when we start to feel as if at all times I'm not God. Let me just I'm not God. You know what I mean? And so I understand that it is God who speaks. And I know that as a prophet, I know in part, I hear in part, I see in part. I'm not going to have all the aspects or all the details all the time. And that's okay. But I think that you learn that in maturity, because people can pressure you to feel as if, or just your own internal things can pressure you to feel as if you always have to be on to
Yeah.
meet expectations of people.
That's so good. That's so good. So I want us to just take the pressure to perform off, right?
Mhm.
Especially when we're talking about in the prophetic, and really flow from a real and authentic relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because I know I see some prophets in the chat, right? But we're not puppets, we're prophets. So take the pressure to perform off, and allow your byproduct of your intimacy with God to flow from that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I think but you know, okay, I got a question now. I got a question now. I got a question now.
Okay.
So, why do you think it's so common though? So we talked about like the validation and the need for affirmation and that seek for approval. But I think in the Black context of culture, it's
Mhm.
so common.
Yeah.
You know what I
Um, I think it's common because, like you said, there's this unspoken pressure to always be on, to always have a word from the Lord, and that turns into performance, right? Well, we're not prophesying from pure places, and we're not prophesying from our relationship with the Lord.
mean?
And like you said, something that's key and that's important. If the Lord is not speaking, He's not speaking, right? I don't speak unless I'm spoken to. And I
Right.
think what's happening is just I think what's happening is there's is turning into the, you have the pressure to perform, and then you have those who feel like they always have to have a word. So
Mhm.
I'm not a prophet if I don't have a word right now. I'm not a prophet if you tell me to give the word of the Lord and I don't have it, right? Maybe it just means you need to be sharpened. Maybe it
Mhm.
just means that you need to spend more time in the secret place, or you need to spend more time in your word and spend more time, really diving through the scriptures to see and hear what the Lord is saying. But
Yeah.
not having a word right now does not mean that you're not a prophet. But once you start putting on that I have to have a word, that performance, and then you turn into the culture's puppet, I think that's where we see so many prophets now just giving words and being spoken, saying things that God is not saying, and speaking for God that they don't even speak to themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I think that's powerful. Go ahead. Finish. You can
no, I'm gonna
finish.
pull out. You go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of that too. When we start, and we understand, like everybody's not a prophet. Some people, prophetic gifts. You're gifted in other ways. God has given you, different gifts to be able to serve with, and different things of that nature. But whatever you identify yourself as, or however you identify yourself as, I'm sure you have felt a time or two where you felt like you had the pressure to perform, right?
Mhm.
Whether that was for family members, whether that was for church, whether that was on your job, whether that was in the context of friendships, whatever that was, you felt this pressure to show up based on someone's expectation of you, or someone desire for you to be a certain way. But I think a lot of this, when we talk about intimacy and we talk about relationship with the Lord, I just feel like a lot of people just have not been discipled. You haven't been discipled in understanding how to walk with God. You haven't been properly discipled in your identity when it comes to an authentic relationship with God. There's a lack of discipleship, and even how do I engage with the Lord? How do I grow in intimacy with the Lord? What does that really look like? How do I go in depth with God beyond where I am currently and
Mhm.
dive deeper, in my walk with Him? I think there has been a lack of really helping, women
Mhm.
specifically on that journey and what that really looks like, because you can see people front facing praying, the house down, or full of fire and glory and all this stuff, but it's like, what does that look like in intimacy? How do I get there where I'm stepping in my authority,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
I think that's good. So when we talk about oh, that's good. I think when we talk about discipleship, we also got to talk about submission, right? So one of the things that is key in the prophetic is being submitted. And I just want to talk briefly about breaking the false dichotomy of sent versus submitted. So in order to be discipled, to be, you know, walking through discipleship, you have to be submitted. So, but our current societal standards suggest that being submitted or being sent means autonomy, right? It means self-governance. It means being accountable only to ourselves, right? It equates to being sent with independence. And submission in our society is often seen as restrictive. So if I'm submitted, you putting chains on me, or requiring us to yield to authority, which the world misinterprets as weakness. However, in the kingdom, right? And even as women, being sent and submitted are not in conflict with each other, right? They're in covenant. So to be sent and to be submitted is a covenant thing with each other. And if we look at it in scripture, Jesus himself was both sent and submitted, right? He was sent by the Father, yet fully submitted to his will. So I think when we talk about discipleship, we also have to talk about what it looks like to be a sent and a submitted woman.
I think that's good. So what would you say is step one?
Step one in being a sent and submitted woman.
Yeah. So because I know that you have women who have been, in the church context for so long, right? And so there's so many different um, mindsets that have to be renewed, changed, developed, restructured. Like, what would an individual do in order for them to get to a place to have a heart posture
Mhm.
where they can look at being sent and being submitted from the right lens?
I think it's first realizing that you can't do that on your own, right? Identifying that we have blind spots. So, for example, prophetic community and being submitted under authority, whether that's in your church, being submitted to your pastor, your leader, or being held accountable in your circle, right? I think first identifying that I can't do discipleship and submission independent of community. I can't do it independent of someone else's lens and someone else's view, because my view is limited, right? I can't see what's behind me. My peripheral only goes to a certain distance. But if I'm surrounded by, or if I'm submitted to someone that has a different viewpoint than I do, then I'm able to get a lot further. I'm able to be sharpened. I'm able to see, this me being submitted in this area doesn't take away from my authority, right? It sharpens me as a woman. It sharpens me as a prophetic gift. It sharpens me as a leader. It sharpens me as a wife. Being submitted to my husband is not, it doesn't take away from who I am as a woman, but it makes me a better woman. So I would say step one is really identifying the need for community, and to know that you can't do it absent, like you can't do it alone,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah.
can't do it ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that it's so important because I always talk about the example of Jesus and the Godhead, and how Jesus, the Holy Spirit, God the Father, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit are in community. There's a level of accountability that's taking place there, and that the Lord never meant for any of us to live on an island on our own, where we're secluded, where we're isolated, where there's no one to check for us, there's no one to challenge us. There's no one to stretch us. There's no one to help see blind spots or anything of that nature. But I think what happens in the heart of prophetic women specifically, I mean, these are prophetic individuals overall, is that there is a level of rejection that, those who are highly gifted, especially prophets, oftentimes the Lord uses that in your development, right? But when you're not able to properly, maturely, intentionally filter through, heal from, deal with, confront that rejection, what
Mhm.
ultimately happens is that when you start to enter into relationships, or you start to enter into dynamics that people are doing things out of love, right? They're
Mhm.
doing things out of purity, they're doing things out of integrity to help develop you. You can try to reject those relationships before you feel rejected, because ultimately what you're trying to do is you're running from the feeling of rejection. You don't want to experience that feeling again. And when you start to get into dynamics where there's authority figures, those who even maybe even friendships where you have friends who are not willing to just let you just be anything, right? I'm going to challenge you, I'm going to stretch you, I'm going to hold you accountable, like I'm going to be in your corner. And some people are not used to that, and so what it can look like and resemble potentially is something of the past, right? I tried this before and it did not go the way that I expected it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reject you before you can reject me. It can also create rebellious tendencies, mindsets,
Mhm.
um, unhealthy behaviors, right? Where we don't want to subject ourselves to anything that's authoritative, because it can remind us of something that we've experienced as well. And so
Mhm.
I think we have to be very careful about filtering through that in the heart to
Mhm.
ensure that when God does send us the proper accountability systems, that we don't reject what the Lord is sending us as a gift.
That's good. And it makes me want to take a hard left, right? So, with that, how do we navigate friendships and sisterhood as prophetic women? Because I think we have a group of women here in the chat. I do see some of our guy friends. Hello. Um, Specifically for the women, how do we navigate friendships and sisterhood in the prophetic? So dealing with comparison, right? Dealing with betrayal and finding those safe spaces. What does that look like?
Let's get into it, okay? Because first and foremost, this is where the the good stuff is.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, first and foremost, I would say is not everyone is called to walk closely with you.
Mhm.
That's first and foremost. And I think what happens sometimes is that we're not discerning enough to determine who is actually a friend, who
Mhm.
may be an assignment, who may be an acquaintance, whatever that may look like. And I think we have to have those honest conversations with ourselves before we try to include others into our
Mhm.
lives, right?
Mhm.
And being able to say, okay, number one, do I have a capacity
Yeah.
for whatever relationship dynamic this is? Because friendship building, relationship building requires
Yes.
time and intention. If you're out here trying to
Intentionality.
build with 10 people, you're going to drop the ball somewhere.
Yes.
You're going to drop the ball somewhere. And so I think it first and foremost starts with your willingness to be honest with yourself.
Mhm.
But see, here's the thing too, is that a lot of that goes back to performing, because when you are so used to trying to meet the expectations of others,
Mhm.
you don't always have the bandwidth or the maturity to measure your own desires,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm always trying to meet the expectations of others. I don't know how to measure my own desires to even determine, do I desire this dynamic? Do I desire this relationship? Do I desire this friendship? Is this something that is God ordained, right? Being able to measure those things before you enter into any dynamic can truly help from anyone being offended or building something that was never meant to be built.
That's good. It reminds me too. So we were Prophet Jaleel, I think he's in here, but he mentioned last week the importance of defining the relationships. And that's something that you mentioned, right? So identifying, is this someone that I'm supposed to walk closely with? Is this
Mhm.
an assignment? Is this an associate? And it's okay to say, you're not someone that I'm gonna pull in close, but you are someone that I'm assigned to, right? I'm
Right.
assigned to walk through a certain season with you, etc. But I also think that we just don't know how to do friendships well. And now this is me kind of pivoting into my counselor, putting my counselor hat
Yeah.
on. A lot of times we don't know how to cultivate healthy relationships because we haven't seen healthy relationships, right?
Yeah.
if you grew up, or if the way in which you identify or view relationships is skewed or is through an unhealthy lens, then the way in which you have relationships with others is going to be skewed and through an unhealthy lens, right? So you'll have unhealthy expectations, you'll have unmet or unspoken expectations that you have in those relationships, and then you're looking up and you're wondering like, man, I don't have any friends. But
Mhm.
another thing is too is showing yourself to be friendly, right? It's the small things that I think we take for granted, right? Now, sometimes you, and I'm guilty of this myself, right? Sometimes when you're in service or you getting a word from the Lord, you stone face, and I have to literally remind myself, smile, right? Like you have to show yourself friendly in order
Mhm.
to have friends too. And I think that in the prophetic, when we're talking about sisterhood and we're talking about relationships, it's so important that we're not lone rangers and that we're not doing this independently or on our own, because you need community,
Mhm.
right? You need people to measure you. You need people to hold your arms up, right? You need people to say, hey, I see you veering off to the left, let's have a conversation, let's talk.
Yeah.
Or you may just need someone to go out and have a good laugh with, right? And I think that once we learn how to do relationships well, we'll see the fruit of them and the benefit of them. But sometimes, if, like you said, if we're not intentional, if we don't have intentionality, if you've seen relationships done wrongly or incorrectly, then you'll bring those same habits and those same expectations to your new season when and you praying, right? You praying, Lord, I need some friends. Send me some friends. And the Lord has sent 15 women to your life, and you're stone faced or you got sour lemon, all of the things. And I think sometimes just really taking that step back to say, Lord, I do desire friendship. I do desire sisterhood. I desire community. Help me to be that person, right? Help me to be a good sister. Help me to be a good friend. Help me to do relationships well. Teach me how to be a good friend, right? I prayed that prayer before in one of my seasons. Lord, show me how to be the friend that I'm desiring. And I
Yeah.
think that's important just as women in general, so that we're not comparing ourselves. Um,
Mhm.
have safe spaces. We don't feel betrayal and all of these things that come with an unhealthy or a skewed view of relationships.
Yeah, that's so good. I think one of the things that you said and kind of just made me, well, it kind of put this thought in my mind about the post that I made on Facebook. And I think it's important that we have to hold ourselves accountable as well, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to go through things in relationships, right? Every
Mhm.
relationship you have in your life may not be a relationship that is long lasting. Going through different stages of life, you may have experienced, betrayal, or you may have experienced people who let you down, or all those different things. But throughout life, you're going to have to go through hard moments in relationships. Like, that's just what it is. Like, we all have to go through them, whether it's family relationships, whether it's friend relationships, whether it's ministry relationships, whatever. You have to go through conflict because you're dealing with human beings, right? You're dealing with flesh. You're dealing with people with different opinions, than you, different upbringings than you, all those different things, different tolerances than you. And so for you to think in your mind that a relationship is not going to go through some level of, conflict, that is an error in itself. And I think a lot of people want to opt out of relationships as soon as it gets hard and think, oh, this person, this is not a friend, but did you even have a conversation with the person? Did you try to talk about it? Because offense is a choice. You know what I mean? You can remain offended based on what maybe you may have experienced, or you can grow in maturity and have mature conversations with individuals and say, hey, that didn't feel good to me, or hey, that hurt me, or can you tell me more about why you did what you did, or let's talk about that because I am feeling certain type of way. But that requires a level of transparency and vulnerability. But what I've learned about prophetic women is isolation is a
Mhm.
better choice.
Mhm.
Right? You're like, what I would just prefer to do is I'm just gonna bag out, and I'm gonna go back to what I consider my safe space, which
Mhm.
is a state of isolation where I'm disconnected, because
Mhm.
you can be around people and still be isolated. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
really it's really how open you are to allow other people into your actual individual world. And
Yeah.
so what prophetic women, gifted women, or gifted individuals in general typically like to do is, I'm going to go ahead and choose the option of isolation because that's what's familiar, that's
Mhm.
what's in, and that's the space that I best know.
Mhm.
Now, to grow, if you want to grow as an individual and you want to be able to mature as an individual, you have to choose the route of discomfort.
Mhm.
That is going to look like pressing and pushing yourself to be transparent and
Mhm.
vulnerable
Mhm.
about whatever may be happening in you so that you can build and develop healthy relationships.
That's good. And that takes courage, right? It
Yeah.
takes courage to say, I have to be vulnerable enough to allow others into my space. I have to be vulnerable enough to have courageous conversations, even though, my default is isolation. And I
Mhm.
think that it takes intentionality. Like we said earlier, it takes vulnerability, it takes transparency. Healthy relationships thrive in transparency,
Yeah.
right? If you come to the relationship and you're able to say, hey, here are some of my desires, or here are some of my shortcomings, or here are some of my things that I'm I don't know, some of the things that I'm seeking to do in life, um, then you'll start to see some of those relationships flourish, and you'll start to see some of the fruit of it. I think the danger in relationships is, like you said, when you come to a relationship and you're present, but you're not present, right? Like, I'm here, but I'm not mentally here. Or
Mhm.
I'm in the space, I'm at the brunch, but I'm checked out. And
Mhm.
I think it would be the enemy's desire to keep us isolated and to keep us separated. But it takes that intentionality to say, you know what, I do want relationship. I do want to connect with other sisters. I do want to be in prophetic community with other women, right? Because it takes absolutely nothing away from you to give a compliment, right? It takes nothing away from you to say, I see you, sis. Like, I see what you're
Yeah.
doing in the kingdom. I see what you're doing in your business. I see, how you're being a loving wife. It takes absolutely nothing away from your wheelhouse to pull somebody else up. So,
Yeah, and I think it's, I think too, when you, again, this whole performing thing can show up in so many different ways, because when you are trying to display yourself as something forward, front facing, but
mhm,
behind the scenes that's not who you are.
mhm,
Like I've said before, that is what I believe is the most triggering for individuals, like,
mhm,
because you're trying so hard to be something that you're not. And I feel like if
mhm,
you're able to just be more resolved in where you are in your journey, you wouldn't see another woman as competition. You know what I mean? Like, when you're solid, like when you are solidified, when you identity, you like, the Lord loves me and all my flaws and all my, filthy rags on my best day, like when you understand, you know
mhm,
what I mean? Like all of that, and you've really been able to like get to a place of security internally, and you realize that you are uniquely who you are. There's nothing that another woman could have or do that would cause you to feel as if that person is competition, or for you to even be jealous of that individual. But
right.
it's the broken parts of us we're not honest about, and we're still just trying to parade or facade as something that we're not. And
Mhm,
then when we see women who are confident, when we see women who are secure, when we see women who are able to flow in their authenticity, then we're triggered, because we're like, I've been trying to do that, but I can't, right?
yeah,
And so that is what really I believe is a lot of the roots of comparison, jealousy, all those different things when we see that in
mhm.
women.
That's good. So I'm gonna ask the question that I always try to ask, the elephant in the room question, right? Because I know that I'm seeing some of the things in the chat, but how do you do that, right? So if I'm gonna just sit in this seat for the women that are here. If I am that woman that knows that I compare myself to other women,
Mhm.
or I know that I have low self-esteem, right? I know that when I show up, it's like, oh man, what does she have that I don't have? What is step one into becoming a confident prophetic woman? What does that look like?
The first thing I think is the most important thing is having a confrontation with yourself. Like,
Mhm,
you have to have self confrontation.
mhm,
And I think we always look for other people to show us the way, show us the route, tell me what's wrong, tell me what I can do next. But it's really when you can be truly honest with yourself and confront the things of your own heart.
Mhm.
One of the things I try to do in my relationship with the Lord so often, it's so easy to want to, out of shame or guilt, feel as if you want to suppress, some of the things that may come up, right? You realize there's some things in your heart, you like, that should not be there. Let me just sweep that underneath the rug.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't just have that thought, or that didn't just come across my mind. Instead of doing that, I'm like, let me put this before the Lord and let me confront what's in me,
Yeah.
by placing it before the Lord, because that's like a mirror, right? When I can
Mhm.
give it over to the Lord and I can lay it on the altar and I can be honest and I can be real with God. Like, I didn't like that. That's ugly. That's not good. What is that? Why is that there? I'm allowing the Lord to place a mirror on my heart and reveal me to me, right? The Bible's very clear. The heart is deceitfully wicked. Who can know it? So there's no way we can ever know all the things that are happening in our hearts. But when things do surface, you are doing yourself a disservice when you try to sweep that stuff under the rug. It
Yeah.
is best to confront whatever is popping out of the heart, whatever is starting to reveal itself and show its ugly face.
Mhm.
Let that thing come up and then confront it. Self confrontation, I would say, is the first step. What would you say is the second step?
That is so good. Self-confrontation. I would say the second step is really taking those things before the Lord. So once you do the self-confrontation and you realize, like, man, there are some things that are here in my heart, and the Lord brings those things up to the surface, I think it's
Yeah,
important to give those things back to Him and to say, Lord, here is what is operating inside of me. Now help me to be the woman that you've called me to be, right? I
mhm,
think like that unraveling of your identity really requires full submission to the Lord, but it also requires you to spend time in His presence so that you don't put on a false identity, right?
yeah,
Once you
yeah,
start pulling all those things up to the surface, like I said, it takes courage to really deal with some of the things that are in our hearts, right? So if there's bitterness, if there's jealousy, if there's malice, if there's arrogance, all of these things, it requires us to really ask the Lord, how do you see me? What does your word say about me? What does your word declare over me? And then allow the Lord to reshape who we are and reshape our identity in the secret place.
yeah,
Because I think oftentimes, even just with social media, if we're not careful, we'll allow the world to tell us who we are instead of allowing the Lord to tell us who we are, right?
mhm,
We'll
mhm,
allow the Lord to say, that we should just focus on our business, and like you said, sweep it under the rug. And now you're this successful seven-figure businesswoman with a ugly heart, right? Your heart
yeah,
is nasty and is and I think that one of the things that would just sharpen us just as women, and that would just build us up as women, is allowing the Lord to speak over us, right? Allowing the Lord to tell us who we are before we allow the world to tell us who we are. So
mhm,
spending that time in the secret place and allowing Him to give us our identity, and allowing Him to tell us who we are before He formed us and before He made us, what He declared over us, right? Who
mhm,
He said that we were in our mother's womb. What is it that He set on earth for us to do before we were ever born into this world? What is the idea that God had in mind for our lives? And who did He call us? Like, who did He say Raven was? Who did He say Krista was? Right? Beyond me being an entrepreneur, beyond me being a counselor, I'm a daughter, right? I'm a daughter of the Lord. And I
yeah,
think that once we have that self confrontation and that healthy confrontation with ourselves, it's important for us to allow the Lord to tell us who we are and what our identity is.
yeah, the undoing. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
the journey of undoing. And I think too, just to add to that, it takes a great level of humility.
Hmm.
That's what it takes a great level of humility to stay in a process where you allow the Lord to finish what He started in you and go through that whole process of undoing,
Yeah.
because you can start looking at everybody else's process, right?
Hmm.
Like you said, on social media, and you can start thinking, well, they ain't going through this, or it feels like
Right.
I'm the only one, you know what I mean? And why am I having to go through this so long? And Lord, you blessing them, and Lord, you're doing that in them. But it is the Lord's protection. Like, it is one of my things I tell my mentees all the time in prophetic arrows. It is the Lord's protection to have you where you are in your life. Like, if He has you in a prolonged process, if He is developing you and He's like, no, not yet, you can't do this or you can't do that, you can't go here, you can't, no, you still, that is the Lord's protection, because you don't know what's in you that the Lord is trying to get out of you. That when you get to the place where he's called you to, you don't want any of that stuff in you where it can literally cause you to not disqualify yourself, but what word am I looking for? It can just it can cause you just to completely mess up, the journey of where God has you going and He desires for you to be. And so,
Mhm.
if the Lord has you in a process of prolonged undoing, that is literally the Lord's protection. Like, look at that as the Lord's protection. Don't look at that as like, okay, God, why am I still here? I feel like this nobody else is going through what I'm going through, because we know we've been there in our
Yes,
journeys. You
yes,
like,
ma'am.
Lord, this is the longest season I've ever had to experience in my life. Why am I still here? Right? You be kicking and screaming, snot
Mhm.
nosing on the floor. Lord, I want out. But it's like the
Right.
Lord has you there, and it is His protection to have you in that process.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I see the
Ooh.
link in the chat. Okay, hold on. I have a couple of questions, and I want to make sure that we get to them. So, one of the questions was, oh, y'all are in here. How do we hold our leaders accountable? When I bring up the topic of discipleship in the local church, they seem to be confused about what and how to train up the next generation of disciples. So, how do we hold our leaders accountable? I will
Mm.
let you speak to that because you are going into a new season. So, I want to give perspective there.
It's my thing is, I think the best thing to do is to always start in prayer. I think that is the first and foremost thing, is because you can have things in your heart where you're like, I have a desire for something, I have a need for something. And when we start to try to confront leaders and different things of that nature, we want to make sure that we are having conversations that we have allowed the Lord to filter through our hearts, right?
Mhm.
Making sure that there is nothing in us that is putting a requirement on a leader that is unhealthy or that could be potentially, toxic in a way. And so
Mhm.
I would say, first and foremost, you want to make sure you are putting that and saturating that and bathing that in prayer, right? And
Mhm.
allowing the Lord to really work on your heart and deal with, your heart desires and different things of that nature. And then I would just ask, if you have a pastor or someone who is a leader, see if you can have a conversation with a leader at the church, right? I'm sure there are individuals that you're able to connect to, elders, different things of that nature, and you can have a conversation once you've prayed about it. Okay,
Mhm.
once you've released it at the altar, once you've allowed the Lord to deal with your heart, then I would simply, see if I can have a conversation with someone in leadership and say, hey, I'm desiring discipleship. I don't really know what that fully looks like, but this is what I desire, and then allow them to, give their take. Here's what we have at our church. Here's how we have it set up at our church. Here's what we do here. And if you feel like you are not necessarily getting that support at the church, there are other ministries and different things of that nature that you can connect to that could be a support to you. So I would put that before the Lord and allow the Lord to search your heart, and then from there try to have the conversation. From there, if you feel you're not necessarily being staffed in the way, you can also have friendships that pour into you, right? You can also have community in that aspect too, that provides that level of support that you need in a discipleship relationship. So just keep it before the Lord and just allow Him to lead you in that way.
That's good. That's good. She said, "Thank you. I agree." Okay, so let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about the reality of being a gifted woman in multiple spaces, right? And what I mean by that is, so the challenge that many prophetic women feel is the tension of being deeply spiritual, right, while also being present in everyday responsibilities. So whether that's family, career, friendships, there's a pressure, like we said earlier, to always be on all the time, right? And that could lead to burnout, it could lead to emotional exhaustion. But let's talk about balancing calling and personal life and what that looks like. So for me, I'll start off and then hand it over to you, Raven. But balance to me as a prophetic woman looks like making sure that I identify what is top priority in my life, right? For example, my husband comes first above any and all things. My home is my first ministry. Before
Yeah.
I have a speaking engagement, before I take any additional responsibility, my personal life and my personal ministry is to my husband. So I identify what takes top priority first. So as husband, and then it's business, work, school, all the things, and being able to categorize those things, but then also identifying when I'm reaching burnout, right? I recently had a moment where I said, hold on, I need to take, I'm gonna call it a prophetic pause, because we have this running joke. There was a moment where I said I need to take a step back because I feel myself starting to get burnt out, right? So with
Mhm.
all the responsibilities, all of the different hats that I wear just in my daily life, I realized this is a moment where I need to take a step back and really reevaluate what my responsibilities are and where I can delegate. Right. I think one of the things, just being in business, being a leader in corporate, being a leader in your own right, is knowing when to delegate and when to take a seat back, like when to take a step back.
Mhm.
So I think that balance in personal life as a prophetic woman looks like identifying what takes top priority first, and then being able to categorize thereafter. What about
Mhm.
you, Raven?
Yeah, that's good. I'm one of those people too that live by priority,
Mhm.
and I like to call it harmony because I feel like for me, with having these two small babies who I love so much, I have to ensure that things just kind of like flow in a sense. And so I'm a huge believer in harmony and how the Lord allows things to kind of harmonize together. So I'm not one of those people who I feel as if every single day has to be the same. I'm a very structured, very organized, very planned individual, but I do
Mhm.
understand that there has to be a level of like flowing because things can be unpredictable, right? So I have for me, like you said, priority, right? My children, my husband, my home, those individuals are first top priority. And I know that that's who I have to give the fullness of who I am to. But I
Yeah.
also know that if I have things like this live, right? Or I have other, clients and I have different things that I have to show up to that are scheduled, those things are also a priority. And so for me, the way that I can, kind of harmonize my life a little bit is understanding that when I give a yes to something, I'm giving a no to something else. And so if I give a yes to this live, I'm giving a no right now to being with my husband and children, right?
Mhm.
And then if I give a yes to my husband and children, then that means I'm giving a no to something else because my babies, they're gonna be like, give me all of your attention right now. So I'm not gonna be on no computers, write no emails or anything of that nature. And so that helps me to realize how my days have to flow. And so when I
Mhm.
am trying to, do different things within a day, within a week, wearing all the different hats that we wear, taking them on, taking them off, I think about those things, right? So if I
Yeah.
give a yes to this, I have to weigh how is that going to flow through my day? How is that going to flow through my week? How is that going to flow through my schedule?
Yeah, that's good. So setting healthy boundaries, right, to
Yeah.
protect time for our rest, our responsibilities, and I just want to say too, being a prophetic woman does not mean that you neglect yourself. Like, it doesn't mean that you neglect self care. And I think that sometimes we put this S on our chest, right, and we become superwoman. We have to do all the things, and
Mhm.
we don't realize that ministry to the Lord too is taking care of our temple, is taking care of ourselves and what the Lord has, deposited in us. So it's protecting the oil on our life and not allowing ourselves to get burnt out to the point of exhaustion where we don't have anything else to pour out, right? Um,
Right.
allowing ourselves to be filled up, or allowing ourselves to be poured into after we've poured out, and
Mhm.
not allowing us to get to the point of desperation. Like, I'm at the altar and I'm doing backflips because Lord, fill me up, right? I think that being a prophetic woman is it means having wisdom, but then also having the courage enough to say no, like you said, to things that don't take precedence over the now. So being able to say no to the things that are going to burn us out, or being able to say no to some things that you've said yes to in the past.
Mhm.
Setting those healthy boundaries to protect our time, to protect our relationships, to
Mhm.
protect our joy, right? To protect
Listen.
our, okay, to protect our personal joy, allowing ourselves to say, you know what, I need to take a step back today from business and lean into joy, or I need to
Mhm.
take a step back from pouring out into. Now that doesn't mean, let me that does not mean neglect the responsibilities, right, that you have, but it does mean prioritizing, like we said, what's important.
Yeah. And I think it's important too that you have to be willing to honor your capacity, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm a firm believer that you can increase your capacity, but everybody has a capacity cap. Like whether you want to have a capacity cap or not, you have to be okay with honoring your capacity. And as a prophetic woman, you know, and gifted, you know what I mean, just being as a gifted woman in general, and you're wearing so many different hats, you're doing so many things, you can feel as if you, again, you have to be on, you have to give at every moment that you're asked, right, at every moment that you are required. And that's just not the case. You have to know that you are susceptible to burnout because you are human, right?
Mhm.
You are susceptible to um, overwhelmed because you are human. You are susceptible to, you know, having different things break down physically, emotionally, mentally, because you are human if you are not taking care of yourself. And so it's so important that you honor your capacity, you know, in the journey as well.
I love that. Honor your capacity. I'm taking that for myself. All right, ladies, talk to us.
Yes.
Let's see. Let's go over to the chat and see.
Well, this we've had a juicy conversation. Like we've gone from
Yes.
so many different aspects. So listen, ladies, let us how y'all feeling because we ain't took a break yet to even ask y'all
Right.
how are y'all feeling. I think we just was flowing and the conversation was so good. We don't, it's an hour in already. Listen, how are y'all feeling about She Speaks Fire on tonight? This prophetic table talk where we are just getting raw and real, having a conversation about, you know, who you are as a prophetic woman and being gifted and wearing the different hats that you wear. How have you been enjoying this conversation thus far? Let us know in the chat how you feeling, how you processing
Mhm.
everything, what the Lord's saying to you.
Yes. What questions you have?
What questions do you have as well?
Loving it. Very good teaching. Okay. This is beautiful. Maintaining self care is important. Flexibility is good. Reminds me of the Proverbs 31 woman.
Come on. All right. Do y'all have any questions for us? We want to take some questions from y'all about all the things that we talked about on tonight. Being a
Mhm.
prophetic woman, being authentic as a prophetic woman, relationships, owning your voice, all the different things.
All the things.
All the things. Let us know what questions y'all got. Danielle said, I feel good.
Loving the candid combo.
Good.
Very
Regina, this is a great conversation. Crystal, this is good. Loving the candid count. Oh, you said that one. Okay. Awesome. All right. We're going to see if some questions come up on the screen. Ladies, let us know if you have questions. We want to answer those questions on tonight before we wrap up. So, or did we do our job where they're like, y'all gave us everything that we.
right. And you see, the thing is, we said this was foundational, but I feel like we dive into the conversation gets so good and it gets so juicy. It's hard to just keep it as a simple
Right?
conversation. I'll say that.
Oh,
Realizing the importance of community. Good to hear from others dealing with the same
good.
things. I
Good.
love it. That's a good segue into how they can connect with you, Raven. Community. You got some ladies in the chat that's saying, I'm realizing the importance of community for myself. So how can they connect with you? How can they get in community?
Awesome. Well, I would love to have you. I have a free Bible study community called the Prophetic Circle. And we host bi weekly Bible studies where we're diving into the word and just really leaning into what it looks like to walk with the Lord, develop your relationship with God, and to dive into some different topics, helping you to be a prophetic woman in today's world and today's society. So if you want to join, you can go to ravencnole.com/prophetic circle, and you can join me for free in the prophetic circle.
I love it. And for myself, you can go to www.anchorcwc.com. And I have my Anchored Counseling and Wellness community. So you're able to sign up for Anchored. I do a 6-week mentorship group where the ladies and I walk through what it looks like to be anchored in the Word of God, to be anchored in our hearts, and to be anchored in truth. And then I also do one-on-one coaching sessions. So if you're more like I don't want to do the group thing, I like one-on-ones, then go to www.anchored.com or www.anchoredcwc.com to connect with me.
Awesome.
And Raven, we getting a lot of questions in the
Okay,
chat.
now I'm seeing some questions. Okay. Hey, Liz.
Hey,
Thanks
Liz.
for joining us. Listen, how do you balance your prophetic and wifehood? How, when do you connect or disconnect it? Oh, that's a good one. What have you learned so far, Crystal?
Okay, so I'm not an expert. I'm going to start off by saying that. I'm a newlywed, but I will give the gems that I've learned so far. And the way that I balance being a prophetic woman and being a wife is just remembering that the Lord has given me a husband to cover me, right? So although I may see afar off and I may, we love our husbands. Sometimes it's like, hey, about to run into a wall. And they're like, oh, we got it. Sometimes I have to intentionally say, Lord, you gave me my husband as a covering, right? And so, although he may not see or may not identify or recognize some of the things that I see, I take those things to prayer, right? Lord, you show him. So sometimes I think being a prophetic woman and being a wife, sometimes it's hard for us to balance the two. Like if I see something that it's just burning in my soul that I have to tell my husband, or if it's just something that I know, like, oh, we should go this way, shouldn't go that way. Oftentimes I've learned that the way that that conversation is fruitful is by first going back to the Lord and saying, Lord, you show him, right? You make his heart pliable so that we can have the conversation. Because sometimes, and that even goes into us being just gentle women. How can I word that? So not aggressive, right? Not being aggressive as a prophetic woman, because it's okay to still have to be feminine. And the way that I do that just in my marriage with my husband is identifying that he is my covering. He does hear from the Lord too, right? He is submitted to the Lord. So trusting the God in him, and then trusting that the Lord will speak through him. And then another thing that I'll say is sometimes I take those things to my husband, like, hey, I'm having a hard time seeing this rightly. Can you help me? Right?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time knowing which way to go or which decision to make, or I'm having a hard time with uh, a decision at work. And sometimes we can be so accustomed to doing things independently and doing things on our own that we don't realize like the Lord has given us someone that is stronger than we are, right? Someone that can hold us up, someone that can see afar off. So for myself, in the short journey that I've learned so far, I will say, knowing that my husband is my covering and that I'm submitted to him, and that as long as he is hearing from the Lord, that we're safe, right? We're covered. I don't have to worry about if he's going to hear from God or not. It's just a matter of when. So.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. I would definitely say the same. I think for me, I think the biggest thing always is that you have to pray before
Mhm.
you try to approach. And I
Mhm.
think that that is like the foundation of everything we have to be as prophetic women in every area of our lives, especially when it comes to marriage, is
Mhm.
pray before you approach, because you don't know if you haven't saturated the things that the Lord even has given you in prayer, you can come off in a way that may not even be received well. And so, if you want what the Lord has revealed to you, what the Lord has said to you, what you feel like the Lord may want you even to communicate, you want to ensure that you are doing it with wisdom,
Yeah.
and you are doing it, after you have allowed that thing to be saturated in the place of prayer, so the Holy Spirit can lead you in your approach, so it can be received well.
That's so good. That's good. Someone
Listen.
burning in your soul. God show him, but it's taking too long. Patience, woman of God. It's taking too long. That is hilarious.
That is funny.
Okay. There was another question that said, um, how can we be of service to our community when we're new to the area? She said, I feel like I'm all over the place. We just moved to Houston and I homeschool, but I don't have a good community to join yet. So, how do we be of service to our community when we're new? Ooh.
So I'm guessing she's saying because she just moved to a new city. So she's
Mhm,
just saying in general, your community. I mean, you
mhm.
would just have to get involved. You know what I mean? Like if you're not connected to a church yet, then ask the Lord to um, reveal to you some different churches that you can visit. You know what I mean? And start to visit different churches until you find a church home.
Yeah,
And then once you find a church home and you decide that you're going to commit there, then serve based on what your capacity is, based on what your schedule looks like, based on what the Lord may have, whatever your gifts may be and how you desire to serve in the church with those. And so I would just say take your time,
mhm.
um, find different churches that you can connect with, that you can go to a Sunday service, see if you enjoy that, until the Lord moves you to actually join that location. And then once you do join that location, decide where you want to show up, decide where you want to serve and what you have the capacity for. And so just don't feel as if you have to be all in, like I have to do 100 things right away. Take your time with determining what is best for you, and then ask the Lord how you can commit and serve that community.
That's good. I would second that. So, like Raven said, just becoming a part of the community that you're looking to be involved in. So, for example, you said that you just moved to Houston. So, like Raven said, if you're going to church, seeing where you can serve, being around like-minded women, like-minded people, and then even like some of the smaller interests that you have. So, I think sometimes when we move, and I can attest to this because I've recently relocated from one state to another and then to another state. But one of the things that keeps me anchored and one of the things that keeps me grounded is identifying a routine, right? So, for example, if I wake up at 4 a.m. and I go to the gym, I'm going to the gym, I'm speaking to others. And then when I go to church, I'm not just rushing off to hurry up and get in the car and go home, right? I'm staying back, I'm fellowshipping with others. So I think it's identifying your routine, being around like minded people, and then intentionally like building those relationships and building community. So it's so easy for us to just hurry up and get in our car as soon as the benediction is like, all right, bye,
Mhm,
But
mhm,
in order to cultivate those relationships, you have to be intentional with having conversations with people and identifying your own routine. So
mhm, for
yeah,
sure. That's good. Okay. I think those are all the are those all the questions? Did we get them all?
I think so. It's been challenging being a prophetic woman and single. 20 years could be a lot. Okay.
Yeah, I
That's
think.
good. That's good. Okay.
All right, y'all. Well, it has been a fruitful evening. I think we had a good, solid conversation tonight that seems to really have encouraged the women. I think we touched on a lot of different subjects and topics, and again, we said it was going to be foundational, but sometimes it just gets so good that you just gotta keep
Yeah.
on having the conversations and keep digging deep. But what is the one thing, if you could give us one word to summarize this live on tonight? Give us one word in the chat to summarize this live on tonight. Could be one thing you learned, one word that you would just be like, it was this. Let us know in the chat. One word to summarize tonight. And as we wait for that one word to come on up, Crystal, let them know where they can find you again.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at crystal.ray with two E's, Raee. Same thing on Facebook, Crystal Ray Hulbert. And then you can go on my website, www.anchoredcwc.com, and you can connect with myself and other women. So we have a 4-week mentorship program for Anchored, and it's building stability in the heart, mind, and truth of God's word. I also do one-on-one coaching sessions, consulting for organizations. So you can find me across all social media platforms. But if you want to connect with me, then go to my website and send me an email. What
Awesome.
about you, Raven?
Well, ladies, if you want to be able to join the Prophetic Circle, which is a free Bible study group that is powered by Prophetic Arrows, you can go to ravencnole.com/prophetic circle. It is free. And we journey in the word. We have a good community of women who are connected with one another. So if you feel like you want community and different things of that nature, you can do that as well. And then there is my mentorship group, Prophetic Arrows, that we'll be diving into some things pretty soon. But you can check that out as well. You can find me on all platforms at Raven C. Nole, or you can also find Prophetic Arrows at Prophetic Arrows.
Oh,
So,
I love this. So we have our words in the chat. One of the words is safe, and I absolutely love that.
I
So
love it.
Brianna said she felt safe, clear, and fruitful. Um, I see someone say a harmony, fruitful, blessing, impactful, insightful, fire, amazing, plentiful. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yes, harmony. Come on.
Oh, we have another question. Shanice said, how do you know if you are where God has you for protection or you're just stuck?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Hmm.
You want to start, or you want me to start?
I can start. How do you know if you are where God has you for protection? Or you start. You start. I need to think a little bit.
Okay. So, how do you know if you are where God has you for protection or you're just stuck? So, I think sometimes we can feel like we are stuck, and it you have to be very intentional about, is this a fact or is it just a feeling, right? Because one of the things that we know as, counselors and those who are well versed in psychology and different things of that nature, your feelings, how your emotions, they're not facts, right?
Mhm.
They're valid to your experience. They're valid to how you process information, or you're processing your experience. But just because you feel a certain type of way doesn't mean that's factual. Okay.
Mhm.
And so all of this also connects back to your individual walk with the Lord and your ability to be able to allow the Lord to speak to you in season, right? And so that can look like devotion, that could look like prayer, that could look like reading your Bible, different things of that nature. And you have to be able to get to a place in your walk with the Lord that you and the Lord have a two-way conversation, right?
Mhm.
And so you can go to the Lord and you can say, God, I feel stuck, right, in this place in my life. But am I really stuck, Lord, based on some of my own decisions, based on some of the things that I may or may not want to do? Or am I in this season for a specific reason? And so when you have that conversation and you're able to ask the Lord, you know, what is my season? Where am I? Why do I feel this way? What's going on? I think
Mhm.
then, when you can get to that place, then when you're able to hear the Lord, things become more clear. Now, I'm
Mhm.
not going to say that in every season you're going to hear the Lord with complete clarity, but you have to trust your ear to hear Him. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times when it comes to being in seasons where we feel stuck, or being in seasons where we feel like there's not movement, or being in seasons where we're unsure, is that there's a lack of trust in your ability to hear the Lord. And there's also an individual devotion time in your intimacy with God. And so I would definitely say that that would be first and foremost.
Yeah, that's good. I would say pro- protection often comes with preparation, and then being stuck looks like paralysis. So when the Lord is using, or when the Lord is, when you're in a season and you feel like the Lord, you're trying to identify if it's protection or not. The Lord is typically equipping you, He's maturing you for what's next, right?
Mhm.
But when you're in a season where you feel stuck or it's paralysis, it can look like you're spinning your wheels with no growth, right? So I would say inspect your fruit. Do you
Mhm.
see any growth, any movement? Do you have any clarity? Is there any type of forward movement? But my answer to that would be identifying preparation versus paralysis, right? So knowing, is this the Lord's protection, or am I genuinely stuck in a season? Am I spinning my wheels with no forward movement?
Hmm. Yeah. And sometimes we can do that as well because we're trying to force an outcome, right?
Mhm.
We have to be careful with that as well, because if we are in the timing and cadence of the Lord, then we have to walk the path that He has for us. And sometimes we can feel stuck is because we're trying to force ourselves out of a season that God desires for us to be in. And you have to really resolving yourself. Like, this is
Mhm.
where God has me. This is a
Mhm.
process that God has me in, and I'm not going to try to force myself out before it's time. So,
That's good. That's good. Because ooh, you said something good. Sometimes God will keep us in a season longer than expected because it's not time yet for what's next. Right. And
yeah.
I think we get uncomfortable with not knowing what's next. So we try to force the hand of God, or we try to force ourselves out of a process or out of a season when the Lord strategically has us there. Right. But we get uncomfortable with, I'm used to doing so much, or I'm used to having so many responsibilities, and now my season may look like I'm resting. I don't have as many responsibilities, or I'm not juggling as many things at
Yeah.
one time, and we think that, oh, well, something has to be wrong, right? I have to figure out why I'm in this season, and I have to try to get myself out of this season. But sometimes those, you got to identify between divine delays and then those fear-based delays. So if the Lord is delaying us, it'll still look like peace and protection. But when we have those fear-based delays, like you said, Raven, we'll try to talk ourselves out of a season that the Lord has us in,
Mhm.
right? We'll try to and I know it to be true. We'll try to hurry up and say, Lord, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. I'm ready to get
Exit
out of
left.
this season.
Exit left.
Okay, exit stage left. I hate it. I'm ready to get out of it. And really, the Lord is trying to teach us another facet of Himself, right? He's trying to show us a new side of Himself. He's trying to develop deep things within the inside of us. Like He's trying to teach us patience. He's trying to teach us resilience. He's trying to teach us tenacity, and He's trying to teach us how to grow deeper in the things of God. But we're rushing the process, right? We're ready to hurry up and get out of it because it's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel right. But like you said,
Mhm.
our feelings are just that. They're indicators that something is wrong, right? But our feelings were never intended to be our guide, right? The Lord left us a helper. He left us a guide, the Holy Spirit. And I think oftentimes when we're led by our emotions, or when we're inebriated or intoxicated by our emotions, we'll make decisions that the Lord did not give us the green light to make. Right, we're so intoxicated with our emotion of being upset or overwhelmed or frustrated that we make an intoxicated decision instead of a sober one. Right,
Mhm.
so
So good. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, ladies, don't let them feelings and those emotions become facts.
Okay, don't let them become facts. They'll take you right out of the will of God.
Listen, listen. All right, ladies. Ooh, I have said I hate here a lot, but I know there's more to it. Yeah, he is up to something. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we have been on, listen, we have given all that we have to give.
Amen. Amen.
We've given all that we have to give. Well, ladies, we have enjoyed so much being with you on this evening. If this did bless you, make sure to share this with a friend, with a sister, with someone that you know needs to hear this live. We will keep it up so that more women can join, more women can watch it. Make sure to tag them in the comments so they can watch the replay. Any last words, Crystal, as we wrap up on this evening?
No last words, but we will have our prophetic live series continuing. So just pay attention to both of our pages, whether it's Raven Nole or Crystal Hulbert. We have some really, really great conversational pieces that we're gonna dive into throughout the rest of this series, and it's with you in mind. So the prophetic woman, and it's all things prophetic. So you being a prophetic woman in the marketplace, a prophetic woman in your local church, in leadership. I see some pastors here. I see prophets here. I see people from my job. There's so many different types of women that's here in this space. And so I'm excited for where we're going to journey with the prophetic live series.
Yes, it's a nice combination of women.
Absolutely.
All right, ladies, well, have a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We pray that you were blessed. And like Crystal said, look forward to more dates and times where we'll be going live. We love y'all. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye, ladies.